Welcome, everyone, to the Win Now podcast, hosted by Deborah Byrd, founder and CEO of Plug and Play SM.
I am so excited for today's show, so let's go.
And then myself, Todd Bookspan, founder of Win by Noon. He said that the new 80-20 rule of AI was that AI is going to replace 80% of what you do in sales, and made me think, we've got so many people focusing on how do I build that AI to replace myself, and I'm like, forget that. Let's focus on how do we get better at the 20% we need to do.
Like, people don't want perfect humans. We don't want to go to a baseball game where everybody's the same level of talent. That would be boring. We actually fall in love with the cracks and the imperfections. Yet when we look online and when we're having a sales conversation, we try to cover them up to try to appear perfect.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Win Now podcast. I am your co-host, founder of Win by Noon, Todd Bookspan.
And I am your co-host, Deborah Byrd, CEO and founder of Plug and Play SM.
We recently were hanging out in Washington, D.C. after going on Capitol Hill with First Home IQ and meeting with senators and members of Congress. And then we were at the Modern Mortgage Summit together. And one of the things I heard that was profound was from Craig Sewing, the founder of American Dream. And he talked about the new 80-20. He said it was the 80-20 of AI. And so the 80-20 principle, I think most of you are familiar with it. It's called the Pareto principle. And Deb, you're a science teacher. You probably know the history of it. I don't. I just know that it's this long ago thing that basically says, in my layman's terms, that 80% of your results come from 20% of your activities, and that they say it applies over and over again, like in nature, like 80% of the crops come from 20% of your seeds, that kind of stuff. And when he said that the new 80-20 rule of AI was that AI is going to replace 80% of what you do in sales, and made me think at first, oh my gosh, we've got so many people who are focusing on, well, how do I build that AI to replace myself? And I'm like, forget that. Let's focus on how do we get better at the 20% we need to do. So let's spend a few minutes talking about the 20%. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. And I really enjoyed his talk. The title of it was Becoming Irreplaceable, especially in this world of AI, where I think it's valid for some to have fear of just the uncertainty of what does my job look like and how will it change in the future. And that's a great segue into the conversation and the topic today of what are the things that are the most human, trust-building activities that have the highest impact and revenue that AI can't do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know our listeners, we know you're all in sales, right? Whether you're in real estate or loans or some other version of sales, but I think it just applies to life in general. I follow a guy named Kevin Rose. Kevin was the original founder of Dig way back in the day, and he's really been focused. He always focused on whatever the hottest thing was. He focused on crypto and NFTs for a while, and now he's really down the AI rabbit hole. And he just said, yeah, we know that the plumbers and electricians are going to have jobs. But then I'm thinking, our listeners, I don't think are plumbers and electricians. So good for them. But I really want to make sure that we help the humans that we have as listeners be more human, I think is right. Really what it's going to come down to is how do you be more human and how do you connect better? Would that be where you would start, or would you start it somewhere different?
No, I think that's a great place to start. And I would say from a lens of getting to the consumer first in a way that's clear, confident, and gives them a reason to trust you. Again, before they even first reach out is where I feel like we miss more at-bats than we realize.
And obviously you are the queen of social media and now what's some other adjective, the goddess of AI, right? You're learning all these things and people are getting found. And so if someone wants to be better at that up front, what would be the top recommendations you would have?
Build a system to retrieve or collect reviews that are third-party generated. Obviously, they're from your clients, which doesn't have to be just at closing. I think a lot of times we only have it in our process right after the close, but you could have had a great call. Maybe it was a listing presentation, or if you're a lender, maybe it was a new application and they just weren't ready yet. The timing wasn't right. And so maybe you had to give a credit plan. You could still ask for a review, and that single review not only feeds the AI systems of your trust and authority, but it also gives humans the warm and fuzzies. Because if you've ever searched for anything online, I'm always looking at reviews. In fact, that's what I like about shopping online over a store, is because when I'm looking at something on a shelf, I can't really see what other people are saying about it. So I absolutely was at Walmart this morning, took a picture of 2 weed killer yard whatever that I'm not used to doing, but apparently we have crabgrass in Texas. And so I took a picture, I uploaded it to ChatGPT, and I said, which one will perform better in North Texas at the start of May? And that's what people are doing on repeat just naturally, that you've got to be visible. Those proof statements from your clients, not you, from your clients, is great for AI and for human trust.
So I love that. And we've talked about reviews so much but I still think people suck at it. And I think that, so a couple of thoughts, and I want to get some feedback from you on the best platforms for reviews. But I think the easy button to get a review, Robert Cialdini wrote the book Influence, and he talks about reciprocity in there. And so I think that let's just talk to our biggest audience members, real estate agents, loan officers, the relationship. If you're a real estate agent, I want you to go out there and put a review out there for your favorite loan officer. And if you're a loan officer, I want you to put a review out there for your favorite real estate agent, because then reciprocity should kick in, because hopefully when you do that, they will write one for you. I think that's super easy. But how do we pick then where to have the reviews written? Should I ask the person where they want that review, or should I just do it wherever you tell me, Deb, to do it? Because I know that's going to get them the most traction.
No, we heard this from a real estate agent in our Exactly What to Say. I think it was the first certification we ever did, where the strategy from the loan officer was she would call the listing agent after closing and literally would use the script of, hey, I really enjoyed working with you. I felt like your professionalism and your communication was on point. I'd love to give you a review. Do you have a link, or what's the best link I should use when giving your review? And that created more reviews in return for the real estate agent. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and think about that, right? What's the beauty of that? Number one is it's a phone call, right? It's human to human. Hey, we just successfully closed this transaction together. We know that real estate agent has a loan officer, probably with an S on the end, loan officers plural, that they've used on a frequent basis. And now here's this new person, and they inserted themselves in as a new relationship person by going beyond what the other loan officers have done and doing something that agent knows. That agent had heard probably over and over from people like you and I, Deb, that they should be doing a better job of reviews, and had never really had anybody proactively reach out. Maybe had a client or two who responded because they said, hey, can you fill out my Google review or whatever that was? And then asking them what's important to them. Even I said, hey, where should they do it? And you went up to me. It's not about me, it's about them. And even if they pick the place that's not the most effective for AI to be found, guess what? It's the place that they want it to be. So that's probably more important. And then you could also say, oh, great. Oh, Facebook, I'll absolutely put it there. But have you thought about blank Google? Because if you do it in Google, when people are searching in Gemini, they're going to be more likely to find you. Would that be a fair statement? Would you say Google's a good place to do it, or where else would you recommend people do it?
I would say that would be the number one gold position of where you should be collecting reviews is Google.
And I think it's interesting too. Yeah, because I saw Gary Vee when I was at Keller Williams Family Reunion, and he's like, yeah, I'm not really a betting man on which one of these technologies is going to win. Who knows? He's like, OpenAI could go out of business. Don't quote me on that, but they could. You never really know. But he said, I do know that Gemini is going to be in business because they're going to be on all of those Android phones, and that they have a leg up on everybody else as a result.
And now they even have AI, Ask AI on Google Maps. I don't know if you noticed that. But if someone's in Google Maps and they're typing in realtor near me or loan officer near me, not only will it pop up depending on how your account is set up, but also your Google reviews. So reviews and recency of reviews matter more than just volume. So the days of, oh, I have 5,000 reviews, I have 4.8 rating. If you don't have recency where you're getting at least one or two Google reviews a month, then you need to add that to your measurement stack of what is your review to closing ratio.
All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Can we put in the show notes your little recording you did on setting up a Google business profile? Would you throw that out there for people
Yes. I
as a
actually have
thing?
a
So
link that is like your step-by-step guide.
yeah, so go watch that. But here's my only ask of you. My only ask of you then is that you make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you're watching it, whether it's on YouTube or on Spotify or one of the other podcast platforms. And then, hey, please leave us a 5-star review. And that's the last thing I would say. It's going to sound really dumb, but I think you have to ask people for a 5-star review, Deb. And I always tell the story. We had a team member, we had a while on our team where we would print out the 5-star review, and we would staple $100 bill to it and hand it out in the group in the meeting. And so this LO was super excited on our morning huddle. She's like, I'm getting a review today. I got this client. She's going to Yelp, and she got a 4-star review for what she believed was 5-star service. She said the client gushed all over. And I just said, hey, gosh, not every client actually believes in giving people perfect reviews. They view 5 out of 5 as perfect. And so you have to actually say, hey, am I on track for a 5-star review? That's a great question to ask someone midway through the process. And really at the end too, hey, I just want to make sure before we close, is there anything else you need from me in order to ensure that I get a 5-star review at the end? So again, also that's an easy way for you to be asking for reviews as we go. All right. So anything else we want to say on reviews before we talk about another way to be the 20%, to be more human as we go forward? Anything else you wanted to add?
Yes, I have one tweak to that, and that's backing up even further, that as soon as you either have an executed contract or a signed listing agreement, it's asking right then, what would a world-class 5-star experience look like for you? And not assuming that we're just going to put someone through our factory line of what we think is world-class. Instead, we're going to allow them to feel heard and feel like it's been customized and tailored for them. So then when you are doing your checkpoints along the way, you should already know, but it still gives them a chance to get feedback, what that experience feels and looks like to them.
All right, perfect. So I'm gonna go out on a limb, and this may not be your next thing that would make the 20%, but I do think it is asking better questions and listening more. The thing we talk about and exactly what to say all the time when we're teaching our certification is curiosity, right? Be more curious, because when people, I think when they go to AI, they're asking it questions, and then yeah, AI does ask some other stuff, but I think AI misses out on the human pieces. They don't pick up on the tonality and the other things that someone is saying. I feel like when you talk to somebody, I can tell when someone's nervous. I can tell when someone's angry about something. I can tell when someone just has that slight edge of uncertainty. But I think I'm only going to get there then if I ask the question after the question, and then I shut up and listen, because ultimately in the end, we believe we know what a 5-star process looks like, but you just one up to me by saying, let me just ask them so they can tell me what they expect. Because if their top 3 things are that you deliver me pizza after the close, and I didn't think about that, and that the house is going to be cleaned when I get in there, which I don't necessarily view as my responsibility, but now it is. And then the other thing that they wanted was, that I update them Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7:30 a.m. because that's really important to them. It's the only time they can talk to me during the week. I might have totally missed that because I had a different plan.
Goes back, and you tell the story so well, but of the furniture story, when Phil explains the most frequently said objection was like around the delivery, like how soon could the furniture arrive? Do you remember? You tell the
Yeah,
story great.
we're all guilty of that, right? And I'm not going to tell the whole story because you got to
Okay.
come to our certification to hear the whole story. But let me just give you the important high level parts of it because we don't have time for it in
Yeah.
our brief little podcast here. But Phil Jones, who we're talking about him, he's consulted in hundreds of industries, but the guy is, besides being the most amazing person with words and exactly what to say, he's a very smart business mind. And so as a very young, he might have still been in his teens or in his early 20s, he was consulting with a furniture store. And we've all been guilty of this. You walk into the store, you're looking for a new sofa, and they're like, hey, can I help you? And you just say, I'm just looking. And so number one is we all start off wrong. And then number two is that oftentimes then they found that people would ask them, hey, is this in stock? And I was surprised when I went to buy a very expensive couch that I thought they just kind of had them sitting in a warehouse somewhere in the middle of the country. And no, they don't. They actually make most of them to order. And it's typically going to take 6, 8, 12 weeks to get. And so they would say, oh, it's going to be 8 weeks. And then the person would go, oh, thanks, and leave. And the person thought, oh, they just needed something now. And that wasn't it. That was really their buying piece. And so ultimately he switched it up and they would ask a question. Oh, awesome. Hey, are you looking for something right away, or what's your time frame for needing something? And by asking that question, it lowered that piece off there. Oh, no, I'm not in a hurry, because they found that most people didn't need something right away. They were actually assuming it was going to take a while, and they were to engage in the conversation differently. And then Phil would walk them through this amazing question tree, which I'm just going to hold back from all of you, and really of how he would get them to essentially buy the fabric coating protector at a way rate, went from like the 20% to almost a 90% conversion. And then people buying footstools with their couches from less than like around 10% to almost 50%. So huge, significant changes by just asking people different types of questions, which we know is the human part that I'm talking about. That'll make your 20% better if you get better at asking the right questions.
And I don't know if you've read the book Super Communicators, but he talks about in the lines of asking better questions, anytime you can ask questions about values or experiences. So One of his examples was if you've ever been in an Uber ride and let's say you're talking to the guy and it's like, oh, what do you do? And you say, oh, I'm a doctor. And oh, what hospital are you at? Those are very logical based questions. But if you say, oh, did you always want to be a doctor growing up? Or what's it like being a doctor? Anything that they can open up a little bit to share a value or an experience, they automatically feel more connected to you. It's a great book, Super Communicators, and it really dives into the science behind how to build trust and be memorable, where it's a felt and shared experience versus just more noise.
Yeah, that's I like that. I feel like again, Jeremy Forcier's new question he's asking clients that he talked about at Modern Mortgage Summit was tell me your story, the whole story. And it's a great way to put it because then he said shut up because again, we say that there's that awkward pause and there's magic in the pause. I always say, learn that from Greg Harkavy, and then let them tell their story. It's we're so uncomfortable in sales with blank spaces and that little. I always love quoting Taylor Swift. That little pause that we have ends up feeling like it's minutes when it's only microseconds, and it is. It is really hard. It was really hard. I had a recent conversation with someone who was very uncertain about what they were thinking about doing, and it was very difficult for me to shut up when I got done with my sentence and then wait for this person to process it because they were just processing it slower than I was processing it. And it was stressful to me. But I talk about this all the time. And so that's one of the things I would certainly encourage you to think about.
It something that Phil had taught us was lazy questions get lazy answers. So if you feel like you're getting short or possibly lazy answers, then go back and look at what you can own and rewrite the question. Is there a way you could make it more connecting, or could you make it a way that almost questions their certainty, not in a way that's like coming at them, but it's a perspective shifting. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. And I think I've shared this with you before, Todd, but I now get a kick out of when I'm going into any store and I get a lazy question, which is typically, oh, is there anything I can help you find? Or anything in particular you're looking for? The typical lazy questions. And I'm like, nope, just shoplifting. And they're like, what? Because it's not, or when you go to pay and they're like, oh, just swipe your card or insert your card. I'm like, it's stolen. And they like don't know how to respond because it's so unexpected. So if you haven't learned this about me yet, I love to pattern interrupt and do the unexpected to just wake people up sometimes.
Is that why security was following us around at CVS when we were there in DC?
Yes.
Yeah, but so let's talk more about the pattern interrupt because I do think that's something that AI is not going to be able to do. And so I would always come back to the idea that it's really going to be the connections that we make as a human. And I do know, I hear there's people all the time who are having, like I talk to AI, right? I push a button on the side of my phone and I can have a conversation, but it's not the same kind of conversation that I have when I talk to someone smart like you, who's more intuitive, has more knowledge of my background and is an expert in a lot of different things. And so what else would you say to people about that human element or how they can be that 20% or what else is going to differentiate them? Because I do think there's probably specific things in different industries, but I think we just got to stick on the human thing that's going to apply to all industries.
I will say the biggest difference between both of those two scenarios you just explained is both people have to be willing to share and open up. So make sure as you're asking more curious questions and you're leaning in with empathy, that you also take time where it's appropriate to then open up and share maybe how you've experienced something similar or how you've been through that. And that is what creates that shared connection piece where it's not just an interrogation. And it's also not something that AI will ever be able to do because AI doesn't have feelings. I think especially on the loan officer space where we're very logical and numbers driven and what's your name, address, date of birth, don't forget to stop and pause and also open up as a human and be relatable. Like people don't want perfect humans. We don't want to go to a baseball game or any sporting event or any where everybody's the same level of talent, same height, same speed, that would be boring. We actually fall in love with the cracks and the imperfections. Yet when you look online and when we're having a sales conversation, we try to cover them up to try to appear perfect. But when you are imperfect, you give them permission to be imperfect. And let's face it, there's a lot of people, whether it's divorce, death, babies, like there's all kinds of things. They may have shame where they maybe don't want to admit they raked up their credit card debt. And so the thought of having to sell their home or borrow equity, like there could be some shame there. So how do you make it a warm, safe place for someone to raise their hand and seek your advice.
So I love that. And I think that I would say there's two ways I would approach that. One is just from the personal experience, right? I'm always like, gosh, yeah, I can remember when I screwed up my credit too. I can remember being flat broke too. I can remember having to have a cosign or two, like all the things that people don't really want to admit as adults that they have to have or have done recently. I'm like, gosh, I haven't made any stupid financial decisions since last week. That's the true thing. Or I think the other part is just storytelling too, right? Is be able to have that shared experience of, oh gosh, I totally understand that. And you don't need to say, although I've never charged up my credit cards if you're financially perfect, but oh yeah, you know what? That's a common concern of a lot of my clients, right? I just helped someone just like you who blank, and here's how we overcame it. So I do think storytelling is another gift that I don't think AI is going to have, right? I don't think AI is going to be able to storytell. And then I also don't think AI is going to be able to give the context. Hey, here's the choice, and here's why I think this choice is important specifically to you based on the fact that you said blank and blank, right? It's that whole idea that you've earned the right to make the recommendation because you've asked all the questions, you stayed curious for long enough. And because of the fact that you said blank and blank, then I recommend you do blank. And so give that. And great loan example was I was listening to my business partner, Matt Baker. He was talking to someone who was getting a loan from their friend. So they were second guessing the friend, but of course, they were kind of like, I'm not really going to ever be able to send you my loan. I'm only going to be able to go through my friend because they're my friend. And Matt's got a heart of gold, and so he wanted to help the person, but he walked them through because they were looking at a high balance conventional loan versus a VA loan. It's over $1 million loan. And the person, Matt said, again, it was great. Normally, I think as loan officers, we go, oh, I think you should do this. And Matt instead said, what did your friend recommend? And they're like, oh, they recommended the VA loan. And he's like, did they say why? And he's like, nope. And I'm like, okay, opportunity right there. Again, it's the be human, explain why. And then Matt said, did they talk to you about the funding fee and how much that's going to be and what that's going to cost you over time? And blah, 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 blah. And in the end, I think what happened was that person made the recommendation based off of the slightly lower rate on the VA loan. But when Matt actually did out the numbers and said, okay, even though the rate's slightly higher, since the loan amount is lower, you're going to actually save money over time. So Matt actually totally one up the loan officer. The person should kick their friend to the curb. I don't know that they will. But again, it's the taking the time to explain the why behind it. I think that also will create opportunities for you in an AI world.
Just from a social media standpoint, that is the new focus, is not creating content that explains the what. Like it used to be very educational content. But because of AI, we don't lack information anymore. It's you need to explain your why. Like what is your insight or interpretation of the data, or why is it that you recommended this product over this one? So steering away from just the what.
I love it. I love it. All right. So anything else you want to add on the 80/20, how we make sure that we are focusing on the 20% of what we do that AI won't replace, and make sure that we look through systematizing what we do up front so we're found more specifically around reviews. We look specifically more around being more curious, being more human, trying to pattern interrupt people, dig a little deeper, ask the question behind the question, and then do a better job of the why and helping people emotionally connect to our recommendations. What did I miss? What else should we add as a bow?
I would say the last thing I would add to that is creating unplugging type experiences or events with your database, whether that's a community event you do once a month, or maybe you do a client appreciation event every quarter, but something that gets you back to face. Because I really believe in a world, it's like when the internet and the iPhone came out, people were really nervous about the connection. And it's like, yeah, we can connect and do more, but yet our productivity has, we're almost more distracted than we've ever been, and we feel the least connected, but yet we have all the tools and resources. So I just have a feeling over time, we're going to be starved for human connection and human intimacy. And so if you want to build that brick wall around your database and be remembered when it matters most, then force yourself to do more human to human, like kneecap to kneecap or face to face events. That's fun. It doesn't just have to be educational. It can be fun. It can be giving back to the community, kind of like what we did with First Home IQ in DC. But I would start implementing that into your 2026 strategy.
IRL. I feel really smart when I said that in real life. But that's, I think, a thing, right? I do think that is is an opportunity. I continue to hear that out there as an opportunity. So I think that's going to be just a future show that we're going to do. I just made a note there. We're going to do a show
Okay.
on community events, how to be more in real life with your clients in order to grow your business. Bottom line is, I think you have an opportunity. I think too many people are fearful of what's going on. I view it as an opportunity. I view that AI, as I eventually learned from Deborah on what I can do to be found more easier, doing all the right things. But I think that I will have agents that will help me be more productive in my life. But I'm going to focus on that 20% to make sure that I continue to thrive in this new scary world where robots are going to be all around me.
And I will say, I will end it with be the you you can be.
Love it. All
Use
right, let's
you.
go win now.